Alright, so I'm Johannes Brodwell, and I'm here to show you how to have more fun with programming using pair programming and test-driven development. So I hope you will have fun the next hour. Feel free to tweet to me with Cyrillic characters. I will get credit at home for having tweets directed at me with Cyrillic characters, but I would appreciate if you would use words that sound the same in English so I can make it out. The goal of today, my main goal is to have fun. To have fun programming, because I think programming is fun, and I think that's why most of us are programmers. Am I correct? Yeah. All right. So the first goal is for me to have fun. The second goal is for you guys to have fun watching me and Dima program. And the final goal, which is sort of a stretch goal, is for you to have more fun when you come home and program later. What I will be doing is I'll describe a problem that we will be programming, and then Dima and I will be programming together up on the stage. Then I will ask you to tell me what you saw when we programmed together, what you observed, and then I might show you a few tricks at the end if you're good, or rather if you're bad and don't ask enough questions. So we will be working with a kata called Minesweeper. When I practice programming, we use the term kata to describe an exercise or a problem. This is what the Minesweeper kata looks like. So are there any project managers here? All right, so if you don't know Minesweeper, go ask your project manager. They know all about it. So the goal is I have a minefield and I have mines here and here. And there should be a number on the minefield showing how many mines are next to it. So this one has 1, 2, 3, 4 mines next to it. The way we will be programming it, we have dots representing, yes?
Could you say your name?
Johannes. I last gave this talk in Finland, and I'm telling you, the Finnish audience is very different. They're all quiet. Okay, so the minefield. We have dots representing empty cells and stars representing mines. Does that make sense? And we'll put it on a single line to make it more compact. So next I'm going to ask Dima to come up and join me, and I want you to watch while we're programming how we interact, how we progress through the code, how we use our tests in that process, what design we end up with, and how we use the programming language. And since I don't know Russian, I thought it was a good idea to also choose a programming language that I didn't know. How many of you are C# developers? How many of you are Java developers? And was there anyone who didn't raise their hand? A few of you? Okay, how many are CoffeeScript developers? Excellent. I think we have our language. So CoffeeScript is the language we'll use, and it's a very fun little language. So Dmitry, I would invite you up on stage. Okay, you're on the left. Can you read this?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So should I just start writing the first test?
Yep.
So we'll describe the minefield. Okay. Oh, thank you. And it shows empty cells or empty minefield. So I need a minefield. I'm going to make a new exports.minefield. And I'm going to make an empty 3x3 minefield that should look something like that. and then I expect that my field, my dot hints, I expect it to equal, what will that be, 0 everywhere?
Yep.
That looks about right.
Yep.
And I have an auto test runner here, and it shows it's not defined yet. So, do you want to find it?
Okay.
So, yeah, I full screened. Oops, sorry. First rule of pair programming: make sure that everybody, that both people, so you can control tab between them.
Yeah. So I've got the mine field coffee.
Yeah, I just started.
Screen file. So class experts mine field.
Yep.
And I need hints.
Yeah.
Hints which is empty for now, and I will borrow from you this result as it is the smallest step forward I can do to satisfy your test. And let me see if it's real.
Yeah. Okay. If you do Alt Tab, you'll find so full screen. So just Alt Tab, and you'll see that. Yeah.
Oh.
This one.
Yeah.
Okay, it's great.
Okay, my test is green. The programming is fun. So, in Russian, at the pet.
At the get.
Pet.
Which one means?
It's fine. Shows not an empty field, but shows the mine field shape.
Ah, okay.
I would like to introduce a new row, so you have to satisfy my shape requirement, and I will copy paste this from you.
The copy paste pattern.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, we can refactor it later if we feel that there's a lot of duplication.
but for now, I've got a test with an extra row, which should be fun.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
red. Good. So I guess I need to save the arguments in the constructor. So I'll save into mines the mines that came with the argument, and I'm just going to iterate over that. So for row in, we go from 0 to the mines dot length not inclusive.
Too much.
And no, this is right. This is non-inclusive back at the end.
Yeah.
Okay. Like this?
Yeah.
No, no, didn't help.
Okay.
Well, I think is it funny how unexpected? It's a syntax error. Line 3 equals. Oh. Oh. All right. So now it's correct.
Yeah.
All right. So what I'll do, I'll change your task instead of adding a new one, so that we introduce a change in both dimensions.
So we just don't need another test. This test is fine to it makes me some pain.
Yeah. All right.
But not my pain because, well, actually I did this once, and I will introduce the nested loop for call in, and I will once more copy paste something from you, and I will take that it's it's square.
Yep.
So I'll take the dimension from the first, and I need to join this by the using empty string.
That's good.
Let me check if I set
That's good.
yeah, but
Feels like you're very, very
I didn't
happy.
like it's scrappy. I've copy pasted from you, and I didn't like what I did.
You didn't get the out there.
Yeah. So I'll introduce calls, and we'll make it like this, and we'll say that in calls. I always miss this, and I will make rows, and
Yes, you always miss
let,
it.
let me check. One more time. So let me check if I'm still green. Yeah, I'm still green.
All right. You want to
Well,
do something?
yeah,
with
this
this?
zero is not good, and I'll say it's a hint.
Yeah, it's a hint for the row.
It's a hint, and now I haven't missed this braces. And a hint. For now, my hint is just the zero.
Okay.
I'll make it.
Do you want to make it a hint for the row and the column?
It's a hint.
It's not important.
Yeah, it's a hint
Yep.
for the column.
Okay.
And it will be grouped in the row. So, am I still reading? Let me check. Yeah,
Yep.
it's still reading. So, code became less messy.
Yeah. Let's see if we can do something about the hints thing. So the next test should have to do with the hints.
Yeah, I will probably give you something new. I will still need these lines. But I would like you to show me something else. For example, the mine.
Cool.
Probably we don't have the mine. It shows mines.
Alright, so if there are lines there, it should be.
It should be mines are shown as zeros. No, not zeros, but as stars.
Yep.
And let me see if the test is now.
Yeah, and it's failing for the right case.
Satisfy this test.
I will satisfy this test. Alright, first I need to know which row and column this the hint is for. And then I'm going to say that we'll return a star if the minefield at that row and column is a star. That should work.
Yeah.
And
You're
it's green.
green. Yeah.
Okay, and I'm going to refactor this out to has mines row and column, so it's so it reads a bit better. As mine.
It's mines. Yes.
Yeah, I have to change it on the other place. So here, that should work.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I need to. This is the error I always make. This needs to be at here.
That means a field of this object.
Yes.
Field or method. It doesn't matter.
Okay, I'm screwing again. I think I want to refactor this a little because the tests are kind of getting repetitive.
Yeah.
So we expect the hints when there are a set of lines. Should be something like this, and the lines going here. So that should work. So now it's a bit more compact. Expect hints is not.
There's also a hint.
Hint and hints. So you're green again.
And then I want to do the same thing with this. And this. Everything slows down when I'm using the mouse. It's like in the Matrix. Alright, so it still works.
Still green, yeah.
Alright, let's start working with some rules. It indicates hints, it indicates mine to the left. So if I have a line field with a line in the leftmost position, the hint should be a star and a 1.
Yep. Okay. I'm green.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm green. And now it's my turn to give you the task. It's called ping pong. Yeah.
Yes.
So to the right, it's the smallest step I can do. I can inverse this data you provided me, and I can get a new task for you.
And the test is red. And I'll just copy your code and fix it like that. All right, so we're still working with different sides. So above that. Like that?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's this. Now, above. So, the rows.
Yeah.
It's all about the rows.
Row -1.
-1 and the same code. And let me see.
Oh, everything is crashing because you're
everything
stepping
is
out.
crashing because I'm out of the bounds.
Yeah.
So this as my method is splitting 1 and 5. And
If the row
if
is
the
less than 0.
is less than 0, or I can use unless row is greater than 0, then return false.
It has to be greater than or equal to, I think. Maybe I have to say that.
I can use this.
Yeah, I can do that too.
Yeah, I'm green, and it's now my turn. Actually, I can use this syntax. Let me give you the other small step would be to find the line below this cell, and as usually I use your data, enter them, and voila. A new test for you, which is falling.
New test for me. All right, this is getting to be sort of repetitive, so I think we need to switch gears pretty soon. Okay, so I've got the out of bounds. So unless it's less than minus something.
Yep, sounds like this.
Yeah. All right, this I can actually write in a more compact style here.
Wow.
And I can do the return first. Return false unless the row is within the bounds. I like that.
It's mind-blowing for us C# developers.
Java developers. All right, the next test. Now we have left, right, top, bottom. We don't have the corners. So what I'm going to do is show hints around. It shows hints around the line. So if we put a line in the middle. Then it should be one all around that line in the middle. Oops. And the corners are wrong there. So that's
Yeah. I've got to deal with the corners, and I will start with the simplest what I can do. I can check the call +1, row +1, the row +1, call -1,
row minus
the
one.
row -1, call +1, and the row -1, call -1. Seems to me that I don't have. Let me check if I'm satisfied. Yeah. The test is running, but do you like this?
No, that's pretty bad. All right. How about nested for loop?
But I know how to care about it for error in
row -1 to
row -1 to row +1 for C in call -1 to call +1, I can use this simple statement with call
C and R.
C
R or R and C.
R and C. Yeah, and I will leave this for now.
So you have to say return one if.
Return, yeah, return one if. Now, perfect. Yeah, now
Okay.
I'm read, and I don't need this graph anymore.
I hope so. Alright, I can
Yeah,
hit delete. That comes the moment of truth.
I've got
Yes.
Control Z.
Okay.
No, it's not. I will give you a small task now. When I've detected the mines, I would like you to calculate what was the amount of mines around the count mines around the cell.
Good.
And I will give you lots of mines, as much as I can.
I hate it when I get that sort of money.
You will be surrounded by the mines, and I expect you to give me mines, 8, mine, and mine. And
Yeah,
look
'cause
at
we
this.
don't count them, we just say one. Alright, so I think this might be the problem. So let's count them. Like that?
Yeah.
This looks good.
You've got a problem in your slides.
Yeah, cool. Let's see. One thing first. Do you feel we need these? The left, right, below now when we have around the line?
No, we satisfied all this. We checked all this.
So that's probably a better, more maintainable path.
Yeah, look at this clean.
So that it shows the mine field, it shows the shape, it shows mines, it shows hints around the mine, and it counts the mines around the cells.
Yep.
Okay, and you said we have the ones in the slides. We can use that as an acceptance test.
Yep. You missed.
Thank you.
L.
Hints. So how did that look again? So it's an empty row and then a row with a mine in position 2 and one with mine in position 2 and 4 and one in position 4. So mine in position 2 and dot star.
Yep. Start.
And
Brace.
here and dot stop. And the result should be so what should it be? It should be, if we look here, 1110 2 star 1 and 2 star 4. What was the last one? Star. And okay, 113.
Start.
All right, so that's our acceptance test. Do you think it'll pass?
I hope so.
Yeah. So how do you say it works?
Yeah.
How do you say it works?
I don't know.
Работает.
Работает.
Работает. Thank you.
Cool.
All right. So did you notice anything about how we interacted? Yes.
Your partner worked as a spell checker, static code analyzer, and code reviewer at the same time.
Very good. Anyone else? What did you notice? I'm not giving you more chocolate. Yes.
I guess it was ping pong technique, like that. So if you create task and drop it to your partner and in this way.
Very good. So so I wrote a test that was red and I passed it to Dima, and then he made it green, wrote another test to be red and passed the keyboard back to me. So that's a style called ping pong programming, as you pointed out. Anything else you noticed?
Java is much more easy.
Java is?
Much more easy.
It's easier to understand Java. All right. I'm not sure I agree, but you'll get a chocolate anyway. Okay. So how often did we switch drivers? How many times did anyone count? How many times do you think?
Many.
Many. Many. How many of you practice pair programming on a daily basis, or how many of you use pair programming?
Not so many.
Not so many. How many of you have used it some? A few of you. How often do you change partners, switch the keyboard compared to how we did it?
When you get tired. Almost
now.
When you get tired.
When you get tired. So that's a normal situation. Here you go. And so we switched a lot in a industrial setting when you're working on a real problem and not a toy problem like that. You'll be switching less often, but still more often than you'd think. Is that mine? All right. That means that I have 20 minutes, I think.
Yeah.
You pointed out some effects of pairing with a static code analysis and a spell checker. Did anyone else notice any effects of pair programming?
The learning. If you don't have much experience, for example, for writing tests, you see how your partner did it, and you repeat.
She knows all answers.
She
knows all answers.
Yes, she's not getting any more chocolate. But I still will take your answers, but I need to distribute the chocolate more evenly. So do you think that it would be more fun to work in this way? I think that's one of the main motivating things for me, is that it is more fun. So you pointed out something, spell checking, helping with syntax. What else did the non-driver do, the person who didn't have the keyboard?
He watched about whole process, about direction of the program.
Very good. So, the navigator, as it's often called, watches the big picture. Where are we going? What's the next thing that we will be doing? Are we staying on target? We talked about that we wrote a lot of tests. How many of you write test-driven development, use test-driven development? More of you. How many have tried it? So how big are your steps compared to the steps we took? Bigger. Do you feel that were our steps too small, or were they too big, or were they just right? Anything else?
They work, they are right. I mean, if they are working, that's totally okay.
Yeah, would you have given the same, I'll give you another chocolate. Given the same problem, would you have preferred taking bigger steps?
No.
Or smaller?
I think the steps were perfect because each step led to new test case.
So each step had sort of, so I think what you're saying is...
So each step has to lead to some test case.
Yeah, and each step is a test case, and each step also invokes one change to the code. Each new test case changes the code in one specific way. Did anyone remember, what was the first test we wrote?
Empty.
Empty, yeah. So, do you want chocolate?
Yes.
I don't think, after after my experience in Finland, I didn't expect to have to use this much chocolate, so this might be a problem. The empty test is a very good example of sort of a base case. It's a test that's easy to pass and sort of outlines the problem. So, do anyone remember how we implemented it? How did we implement the empty minefield?
Hard-coded.
Hard-coded, yeah. Is someone over here? You don't want chocolate?
Okay.
All right, so was there any point in writing that test when we just ended up hard-coding it?
It was just a starting point. You had to have it.
Exactly, so, and as a starting point, so it's a starting point for the test and it's also a starting point for the code. So it tells us that we have to create the class and we have to create the method hints for this class. So it gives us a starting point even though it doesn't do anything. It is something. It has a structure and that structure helps us. And you're not getting another chocolate because you've already got one. How did we decide which test to write next?
Similar to previous, but like from another side, like vice versa.
Yeah, we very often did we did the left and then the right, the up and then the down, around and then the inside. So looking at the previous test is a very good inspiration. Does anyone remember what the second test we wrote was?
Show mine.
That was the third test, and that was the test that I was actually asking for. So
Different dimensions.
so the different size was the second one, and like you said, the third one, which is what I wanted to discuss, was show mines. Do you remember what discussion Dima and I had before we created that?
How to refactor?
Yes, exactly. We refactored out. The hard-coded 0 into another method. And then we looked at that method and we said, something is wrong here. We need to create a task to force us to change that method. So we looked at the code and we saw that the 0 is not supposed to be a 0. So we had to create another task. And the refactoring drove that discussion. What was the final test we wrote? Acceptance test, exactly. Good catch. Why did we write the acceptance test last?
It was that your customer asks you for.
Yep. So it verifies that we've done exactly what we needed to. All right. Did you see anything interesting that we explored with the language? So, did anyone notice any tricks with the language? Does anyone remember? Yeah.
One trick with the language when Dima wrote them, and you correct him by writing return first, and then you fill the sentence. Return unless.
Yeah, exactly. So you can have a trailing if statement, which I think is great fun. Does anyone remember the name of the language? Okay, good. One thing that's very interesting, the reason I like to use CoffeeScript for this is that it actually compiles down to JavaScript, and the screenshot that I showed you is actually running this code in the browser. But I don't have code running on my computer and the network is problematic. So how much did we refactor? How many times did we do something that felt like a refactoring? 6 or 7 times, I think that's about right. We'll earn you chocolate. Would you refactor as often as we did when you write code?
Yes.
Yeah. So it seems like the right amount of refactoring. How long was the code read?
Half of the time. Half of the time.
Half of the time?
No, it's more. Oh, you mean seconds?
I'll give you the chocolate because that's the answer I was looking for. I'm not sure if it's correct, but we wanted to keep the code read as short time as possible. So the last test that Dima implemented, he implemented really ugly code, And then we had something that was green, and then we refactored. So we had something we knew was working before we tried the more advanced algorithm. So keeping it red as short as possible, and then refactoring on green is a good way to stay safe. How did you guys like the final design?
Clean.
Clean?
Testable. Testable.
Testable, yes, very much so. Was there anything you thought was weak, that wasn't so good with the final design? I'll bring it up. So, is there anything that you guys don't like with this code?
I don't understand what there will be if you get not numbers where there is a boundary that only numbers will be given for the variables.
Yeah, well, if you pass 0, 0,
yeah.
What will happen?
Actually, what will happen is that you get when you do row -1, you're caught by this. When you're doing column -1, you get out the first row, and then you index it at -1, which is okay in JavaScript and CoffeeScript. So we're actually stepping outside the rows. We're just stomping all over the code. And what happens is that we return a null. And since null isn't equal to a star, that's okay. Cool. Did you have a comment? Okay. Anything else? Personally, I think this isn't very expressive right here. What are we doing here?
Calculation
the neighbors, yeah. So the concept of neighbors is really gone here. So we're trying to find all the neighbors, but there's nothing in the code that helps us do that. So we've tried rewriting this, but we haven't found a good way to do it in CoffeeScript. But I'm not very happy with that. How did you guys like the trailing for loops, like on line 6? Is that readable?
No.
And you were programming with me. It takes a long time getting used to. Actually, it doesn't take a long time getting used to. It takes a little time getting used to. And then it's one of those, it's like chili peppers, you know? It takes a little time getting used to, and then you get a little kick out of it every time. So this is a kata, or a exercise that I've done probably 50 times or more. And the question is, so why should we become better at programming? I mean, programming is fun, but it really isn't that big a part of what we're doing in order to deliver software. Delivering software is about understanding the customer requirements. It's about having the architecture right. It's about making the right things, and the coding part is only a small bit of the effort. By writing better code, we get code that works the first time, and bug fixing is a big part of what we're doing when we're not coding. So that's good. And hopefully it will, and changing code is also a large part of the job. And by writing better code, we can spend less time maintaining problematic code. But these are not really important reasons. The real important reason that I like to practice writing better code, and that I think you should practice writing better code, is that it helps you think better. So you can work at a higher level of abstraction instead of worrying about the syntax and worrying about the details. You can think of the problem as a whole, and you can sort of lump your knowledge and think more effectively and have more fun. Here are a few things that I think I'm going to skip now, because you were very good and asked a lot of questions and it came with a lot of comments. This I would like to just cover briefly. I think you mentioned ping pong programming. This is how it sort of looks. First person writes a failing test, the other person fixes the test, writes a new failing test and passes it back. When did we refactor? Who did the refactoring?
After green?
After green, and which person?
The same.
Yeah, so in general, that's where you probably will see the refactoring. The person who writes the next test. It's not always that way, but it's good before you write the next failing test to think about refactoring. In many of my teams, I've tried to use this technique that we call a pair programming star. So we have the whole team, the name of everyone on the team in a circle. And now when Dima and I pair program, we write a line between our names. And as a sprint comes forward and we're getting towards the end of the sprint, it might look something like this. And you can see that in this sprint, Dima was very social and pair programmed with everybody. While I might have been a bit absent, maybe I was at a conference, and Mikhail and Sergey probably should try and pair program with someone else and get a little bit outside their comfort zone. This is a great way of visualizing behavior, and we don't have to do anything more than saying this is what the reality is like, and do you want to do this or do you want to do something else? It's all okay. It's just about visualizing the situation. We refactor on green. How do you practice? You can practice at work, write test-driven development, and pair program in your work. You can practice on your own with problems like the one I showed you. And finally, I'd like to talk a little bit about coding dojos. Has anyone been to a coding dojo? Is there a coding dojo? So yeah, you guys were at my coding dojo yesterday. Did you enjoy it? So I would suggest that you guys try and create Kiev coding dojo. This is our coding dojo in Oslo. We have usually we program around a computer together. There's me and 3 other programmers, and we're programming on the monitor. This is in a bar, so it means that we can drink while we program, which is always a plus. This is a code retreat where we have we've spent the whole day pair programming with a lot of different people gathering in the same place. And a coding dojo is a fun way to build a social network and a professional network and learn something and have fun at the same time. Practice programming and free your mind. Please tweet at me if you liked my talk. I will get a credit at home if you use Cyrillic characters, and I can read the words when I decipher the characters. So thank you for your attention. I guess we don't have any time for any more questions.
We have actually time, so.
Any questions? If you don't have any questions, and if you want to go, you feel free to leave now. If you have questions, ask them.
What's the coding dojo anyway? What's the coding dojo?
What is a coding dojo? A coding dojo is a organization or a place where you gather and practice coding. There are, if you look online, there are a few different styles of how you can do it. Like yesterday, what we did was a pair programming coding dojo, and everybody got the same problem, which was prime factors.
You just take random problem and you try to program it. Yeah?
Yes. and you generally we focus on one thing like let's focus on the TDD cycle, let's focus on taking big steps, let's try and take on smaller steps, or let's try and take big steps and see what happens.
How you resolve conflict equations, for example, when you and your partner thinking different about the same thing?
So the question, and I think it's a very interesting question because the question, since it didn't have the microphone, was how do you resolve a conflict when you pair programming about what the design should look like? Am I right?
Yeah.
And one thing that's interesting is that I think that that myself and probably many of you have had discussions with other programmers that you weren't happy about afterwards. And one thing that I found is that while pair programming, I more seldom have those discussions. So it's, and the way we usually, yeah. So a good way to illustrate it is here. So if we disagree, and I have the keyboard, so let's then I think the right thing to say is, all right, I have an idea of how I want to do it. Can we try that, and then we can do something else afterwards? So the person with the keyboard is the driver, and for that moment, the person with the keyboard should make the decision there and then. And it's better to make a decision and then try it. So I think the thing is, you know, I'm driving, can we try? And when you try, it's probably going to be pretty obvious after you try that, yes, this is a good approach, or no, this is a really stupid approach. And then you no longer have the argument.
So the main, one of the main things in the pair programming is to be strictly defined that if you're driver, you can make some steps without just discussing the result verification, just show it. And after this, you can discuss that it's a good step or not good step. Yes?
Yes. So I mean, the person with the keyboard makes the step, the driver takes the step, and then you discuss afterwards whether this was a good step or not. And then you can roll back if you agree it wasn't.
Okay, thanks.
The question is, you were talking about the programming, but my question is about bug fixing and pair bug fixing. Not some obvious bugs, but do you have any advice in finding such weird bugs like deadlocks, etc.?
I'm not sure exactly what. So the question is, how can you use tests to find deadlocks?
How to find such bugs in a pair?
When you're pairing, in general, I think it's not very different when you're pairing. What the advantage is that thinking about the deadlock situation of your code is usually a bit difficult. So having two people thinking about it at the same time usually helps. But I don't have any specific recommendations about, other than the more complex the code, the better it is to be two people when you're working with it.
Okay, thank you.
Does this technique applies well to writing Selenium test, and how not to get bored while running while executing and writing long running Selenium tests?
So the question is, can you use TDD when using Selenium, basically? And I have a pretty long answer that I can give you afterwards, because I have a demo that's using basically Selenium. What I like to do, I think actually I have here. This is a test that uses WebDriver, which is like Selenium, and it goes through HTTP and fills in information using a form. This test is pretty slow, and it takes a long time from when I write it to when it's working. So what I oftentimes like to do is to think of this as an acceptance test. I start by writing this test to know what I'm going to do. And then in Java, I write @ignore here. And then I work on the unit level tests until I'm done. And then like Dima and I did earlier, when I think I'm done, I unignore it. So I run it again. So I often call this sort of a driving test or a directional test. So I like to use a WebDriver personally to get sort of the big view, and then I use unit tests to have a quicker iteration.
But the same thing is when you need to write integration test, this is also can be a much larger time than you use unit test, but you want to do in web. And after every step, you need to run this test and just check that in any model was not any faults. So what's the best hints of practice for in that way?
Again, it's similar in that this is a web integration test, but we've got other integration tests that also can be slower. And personally, I always like to have fast tests in addition to the integration tests, and then only run integration tests less frequently. And I also have another trick that will take way too long to explain here, which is to write a test that can work both as an integration test and as a unit test with a test couple, a fake implementation underneath. I think I might be able to show you an example of how it's done afterwards if you want to stick around.
Are there any usual problems with using pair programming?
The problems with using pair programming, there are two problems you should be aware of. One is that if you haven't done it before, after 6 hours of pair programming, your brain will be fried. You will not be able to think anymore. It is very exhausting. This gets better as you have practice, but you have to work shorter hours when you're pair programming. The second is that some programmers, especially if there's a difference in skill level between the pair, then some programmers don't like to pair program because they feel held back by someone who's not as skilled as they are. In some situations, you can put yourself in a mentoring state and say, okay, I'm not here now to have progress. I'm here to teach this other person. But you can't do that all of the time. So I think it's important when you pair program to make sure that the good people get to pair with each other a lot of the time as well, so they won't get bored and they will continue learning.
And not good people pair with not good people.
That is usually better than not good people working alone. So if there is a person on your team who's not a very good programmer, do everything you can to slow him down. All right. Thank you for your questions.